I'm Ryan Covington. I'm back up here at Covington's Nursery. I'm with our gardening expert, Burton. How are you, Burton?
I'm doing quite well.
And today we are going to go into something I know absolutely nothing about. We're going to talk about growing berries in your yard, specifically grapes, blackberries, and blueberries. And Burton, I may regret this, but why don't we start with the most complicated of those three? Which one? I'm guessing it's grapes.
Grapes.
Grapes, okay. I might not know about growing them, but I have been to vineyards, many vineyards, and it just looks so complicated.
Okay.
Maybe you can make it, maybe you can simplify it for us.
We can help make this easier.
Okay, okay. So Burton, the first thing that I notice at any vineyard is that all of the grapes are growing on structures, substantial structures. So now I'm thinking, at my house, do I need to find space to build something? I'm thinking I'm gonna build something.
You do need to build something.
Okay.
Many vines that we sell for flowering ornamentation go on fence rows. This is not one of them. You need excellent airflow to your grape, so you need to build a freestanding structure. You build it up with large posts that will hold up a good weight over time, and you use thick wire, one about this high off the ground, and another up about right here. And the entire point of this is as the vine grows, you train it to the wires, along the wires, and the fruit will hang off and depend from those wires and still get good airflow on both sides of the plant and good sunshine on both sides of the plant to prevent disease.
And the lower wire is making sure that the fruit is never on the ground. That would be bad.
Correct.
So this might be a stupid question, but just bear with me. These are already on, we're up here at Covington's, these are the ones that we sell. These are already on their own little structures. Is that sufficient?
It is not. These are just to help you get it home from here to your home and for transport.
Or nothing else, okay.
They are not nearly enough to hold these up long term.
Because these are going to be heavy.
They are. They're going to be quite large. You're going to prune them substantially every winter time, but they get big and this won't remotely hold them up.
Okay. So it sounds like that the first big hurdle for most people growing grapes is going to be getting the structure situated in their yard. But let's say that I've accomplished that. I have my beautiful posts and the wires. I'm ready to grow my grapes. Yeah. How do I decide which grapes to plant?
Well, in North Texas, we have a little bit more limitation on that. We can't do every grape variety out there. We have a disease in our area that makes some grapes not grow well and have a bad mortality rate.
What is that disease?
The disease is called Pierce's disease, but there are varieties that have excellent disease resistance. They're going to be Black Spanish and Muscadine style grapes. So primarily, that's what we'll recommend.
Those are our two options.
Yeah.
Okay, Black Spanish, Muscadine grapes.
Yes.
Those are resistant to Pierce's disease.
Yes.
Okay, well that was easy. The decision has already been made for me. So Burton, if we choose the varieties that you recommended that are resistant to the disease, no more spraying.
Well, no, but you don't get out of it that easily.
Yeah.
But for best results, if you place them properly in the yard where they get good airflow and they get good wind flow and you select the proper resistant varieties, it's not too hard to keep track of your spraying. But again, without spraying, half for the birds and bugs, 2/3 for the birds and bugs, half or 1/3 for you.
I'm picking up that spraying is just a part of growing fruit.
It is. There really isn't. Now, there's enough. If you don't want to do that, I leave that up to you. But you're going to have way more production if you'll spray it.
Okay, and what are we spraying it with? I see some things here.
Yeah. Normally, we would spray them with a mixture of copper-based fungicides and either malathion or permethrin for the various things. This will prevent fungal diseases from affecting your developing fruit, and malathion for the insect pests that get on grapes.
Okay.
Now, if you wanted to use a less toxic material, neem oil products work pretty well.
Maybe I do, because I just want to pop these grapes in my mouth maybe sometimes.
Well,
so neem
all
oil.
of these are still perfectly good for eating. You just need to follow the directions and stop spraying X number of days before harvest, and that X depends on which material you're using and what you're spraying for and the variety.
But if I want to go organic.
The neem oil is very low toxicity to mammals, and you and I are mammals. So
Thank you for noticing.
I did. Now, this right here will prevent the majority of your common issues without having to worry about it near as much. You won't get quite as much stop of every particular issue, but it's pretty good.
And just quick question, there was 2 bottles here, a fungicide and an insecticide. Is this going to be
This will handle both for what you're doing.
Okay. Burton, so in addition to the spraying, do we still need to fertilize them just with normal?
Very much so, and the normal fruit and citrus food we would sell you for your peach or nectarines does an excellent job on grapes.
Okay, so I'm just going to recap here. We have built our structure. We have the grapes growing on the wires with good airflow in between. We have sprayed and fertilized them, and then now, is there any chance we just leave them alone and let them do their thing till it's grape time?
No, you do have to do some pruning and maintenance to your grape. For instance, in the wintertime, grapes should be pruned back substantially.
This is odd. I want winter pruning.
Yes.
Okay.
You'll want to prune it back substantially. Pruning it back much closer to the original main cane that you let come up the wires. Depends on variety, whether you cut it back very close to the cane or you allow it to have what are called spurs along the wire, but you're going to prune back your grapes substantially. Also, while it's in production and when it's flowering in the springtime and making the original clusters, you're going to go through in the springtime, and depending on the age of the grape, you're going to take off as many as 75% of the grape clusters.
Wow.
Now, older plants, maybe I take off a slightly smaller percentage. It's got a bigger root system. It can hold on to more grapes. But it's the difference between having wonderful, tasty, medium-sized to larger grapes or lots of little bitty
A
ones.
bunch of small bitter ones. Okay, so that thinning process is really important that
Matters
we get
a lot.
the tastiest grapes.
Matters a
Okay.
lot.
So Burton, hold on. I can't help but notice this is so tiny, this little vine. Am I really doing much winter pruning in the first year after planting this grape?
It's going to be entirely dependent on how it grows. At first, you're just getting it tall enough where it can actually get to the top wire, which won't take that long to train
Really?
it up to that wire.
Okay, so it's
Grapes grow
fast.
quickly fast.
Okay.
But for what you're doing here, the first year you can wind it along it. If it's not that big a plant, don't worry about the heavy pruning. But as it gets older, you will want to substantially prune it. This does two things. One, it lets you have more airflow for the fruit to hang down without quite as much leaf in the way, so that you get good sunshine and good airflow to all parts of it. And also, it simply reduces the size so it doesn't take over the universe.
Okay. And then this brings me to my next question is, in that first year, am I going to expect any grapes?
Almost none. You're going to get a
Almost
handful. Don't leave more than 2 or 3 clusters at most. Again, you can make the argument of taking them all off might be beneficial for the first year, but I rarely have the heart to do it either. So take off all but a couple, 3.
Okay. So Burton, if I'm being totally honest, the grapes might be a little bit too much of a lofty project for me personally at this point, but I did say we were going to go in descending order of easiness, so we've landed at blueberries, and I'm hoping that you tell me that I don't need a structure for these.
You do not need a structure.
Okay, I do not need a structure.
You do not need a
Okay,
structure.
so these might still be in the running. How do I plant these?
Okay, blueberries are best planted with 2 or more varieties close together. Blueberries, some of them are partially self-fertile. They will make some fruit without another one nearby, but all of them produce better with another blueberry of a different variety nearby, and some require it. So, for instance, I can take a variety like this Premier blueberry, which is partially self-fertile, will give me some blueberries all by itself, and plant it next to this Austin blueberry, which needs a pollinator, and both of them have a lot more production.
Okay, so I don't need a structure, but I do need to buy them in pairs.
Yes.
And then I'm planting them again in a sunny area of the yard?
You are. You're planting them in a sunny area, and ideally, when you prepare the soil for the area, this is a job for azalea mix. Blueberries
acid.
like acid. They like a lot more acid than either our soil or our water give you in North Texas. So plant them in azalea mix, lots and lots of azalea mix, and feed them acid-forming fertilizers as part of your normal maintenance.
I'm just being devil's advocate here, but what happens if I plant them in our very basic soil without the acid?
Sadness.
Sadness, okay.
Now, if you'll fertilize them properly, they're not that hard. We grow blueberries in our display garden in the middle of our parking lot.
Yeah, and they do really well.
Yeah.
But so the azalea mix is the soil. That's different from the fertilization. Fertilizer, are we using our trusty?
Well, you can either use our normal fruit and citrus type fertilizer and add additional acid, or you can use an acid-forming fertilizer suited for azaleas and still more acid. Blueberries are the most acid-loving plant that we will plant in North Texas. So add extra acid in the forms of either aluminum sulfate, chip sulfur, iron sulfate. There's multiple ways to get there, but they need acid to do their best.
Okay. So Burton, on every type of fruit we've talked about so far, there's been a thinning and a pruning process. Is that the same with blueberries?
It's a lot easier.
Okay, good. That's good.
All I'm doing is I'm taking out internal branches that grow back in toward the plant, but I'm not doing heavy pruning to it other than basic shaping if it gets untidy, and to take broken branches or branches that are crossing and rubbing on the interior.
But am I also culling some of the blueberries to
No,
encourage
you don't
production?
have to.
No? Okay.
And plus, it would be very time consuming to do so, but they produce well even without that.
And then I'll move to my next question is how much of a crop am I expecting and when am I expecting it?
Well, the first year, again, you will have some crop, and you don't need to take off the initial blueberries off your first crop. It doesn't make enough of them the first year that you have to worry about it.
Okay.
But eventually, several pints per bush over the harvest season.
Okay. So enough to make jam?
Yeah. Now, age of the plant matters, but over time, substantial.
Okay, let's move on to the easiest. Okay, Burton, so you said that these are the easiest. We're at blackberries now, but I can't help but notice these have thorns all over them. So,
yes.
So
they don't all have thorns.
Oh.
There are thornless blackberries. These over here on our left are also blackberries.
Okay, but I'm going to have to assume now that because you've said that they're the easiest ones, that they, of course, do not need a structure.
They do not need a structure.
Do they need to be planted in pairs?
They do not need to be planted in pairs.
Okay.
It's nice to, but you do not need to.
Okay, so I'm just putting these in the ground. Do they need acid?
They don't need much of anything other than just basic fertilization.
Okay, and they're going to grow more as a bush. They're not even growing up any sort of a fence or a trellis or anything. These are just huge bushes.
Most of these will grow up and be self-supporting. There are blackberries that need an occasional support that you can lean. I usually use either a few slats of wood or an old pallet or a wire, but I don't really need to support these the same way. What I do need to do is every winter time I go through and I look at the canes for each year. Blackberries produce best on the second year of growth on each cane.
Okay.
The first year, they will either produce no berries on that cane or only a handful of berries toward the tip of that cane. I look every winter time, I will prune those back a little bit at the top to encourage them to thicken up on the individual cane. And for the canes that produced fruit all the way down to the ground, I will then take those canes clean out each winter.
Why?
Well, they won't produce again.
Okay, it was a one and done kind of a thing. And so I'm waiting for, the second year is the money year. We're all waiting for that year.
Well, it will continually give you fruit over time. Every year it'll make more canes. So the first year, you will only have a handful of berries at the tips of most of these. Next year, it's on.
It's on, okay.
Now, the differences between the thornless and the thorn varieties, if you look closely here, thornless varieties are nice. They're convenient. They're a lot less of a menace to navigation. But larger, fruited blackberries
are happening on the thorn plants. Okay.
So make your own judgment call.
Okay. So Burton, before I let you go, I had originally raspberries on our list that we were going to talk about today, and you said, maybe not. And I want you to tell the people what you told me of why we might.
Well, it's simple. You can do raspberries. They can be done. They're a lot more effort. They don't really like our heat and relatively dry summertime, and they take a beating every summer. So when I can plant something as simple as a blackberry, which is usually an unstoppable monster, or I can plant raspberries and I have to love them and pet them and I have to make sure that they don't get too stressed. It's an easy choice.
Raspberries are going to be an uphill battle, so you're saying we can grow them just with some caveats and some extra love.
The blackberries are a lot easier.
Okay. Well, Burton, thank you so much for talking with me. I'm sure I'll be back to talk to you about more fruits and vegetables soon, but in the meantime, guys, let's grow together.
Yeah.
So, do you remember when we were in South Africa, those days that we toured all of those vineyards?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Just simply beautiful. And, you know, my first thought was, I wish I could have some aspect of this in my landscape, like a little portion, maybe just a small fence of grapes. But my second thought was, wow, this all looks so complicated. You know, I mean, it's an ordeal, all those rows.
It's so manicured.
Yes. You know, but how do the grapes, this is where my mind went, how do the grapes grow in nature? There's no structure that, you know, like the fences they have them on where like the one layer is kept just above the ground so it doesn't rot and the other layer is kept, you know, so the grapes can perfectly hang. So, okay, that is lovely for a vineyard, but what about wild grapes?
Yeah, I've never come across wild grapes.
Is there even such a thing as wild grapes? Like I've never seen or heard of them. But they have something has to exist. Where does that exist? Where are wild grapes?
Maybe in the Garden of Eden. Because I've never seen them before.
I mean, they had to have grapes at least in the Roman eras because they covered their private parts with the leaves.
Okay, now we're going to a whole different situation.